When I was a teacher, there was this specific group of parents where I worked at that gave me the fucking heebie-jeebies. And anytime I brought it up to any of my co-teachers, the admin, my director, everybody was like, no, they're not like that. No way. Like, what are you talking about? I felt like I couldn't bring it up or mention it at all, but I always had this lingering suspicion that like they were really weird people, and I'm gonna get into why. Specifically, this one dad. Mom, she was normal. She could talk to me, converse with me like a normal person. The dad, however, was always very awkward, like didn't know how to like have a conversation, like just very off-putting vibes. And at first I was like, okay, this guy's just weird. Like he doesn't know how to socialize, whatever. Some people are just like that. But as time went on, I was like, this guy's a weirdo. So a little background information, a little context. In no way am I saying this to judge, but it is to give some kind of perspective into the situation. These parents were 54 years old. They had their child at 54 years old. This woman at 54 years old gave birth to this child. And a lot of you may know that it's kind of a no-no to have children over the age of 35 because it can arise a lot of health complications, not only for the mother, but for the child. And I'm not gonna say any details or anything. This child had a lot of issues while she was in our care, and we kept having to send her home for these issues. One time they ended up taking her to the doctor after several occurrences of the same issue, and it turned out that she had like a medical condition, like a physical deformity that was causing her to have these recurring issues, likely due to the fact that her parents had her over that age threshold. So in my eyes, I already kind of saw them as a little bit selfish for having a child that old. So we had a strict no picture policy. You cannot take pictures in the classroom of the kids. It doesn't matter if you just want to take a picture of your kid. You as a parent cannot be taking pictures in the classroom. They did not give a fuck, okay? Dad would always be coming in, recording through the door before he would come in to pick her up. And obviously the other children were in these pictures and videos. And I had to tell him and have my admin tell him multiple times, at least 20 times, you cannot be taking pictures and videos inside the classroom. He was always like, oh, yeah, right, totally understand, totally get it. Do you understand? Because we keep having to tell you. When we would be outside on the playground and he would come and drop her off in like the afternoon during afternoon recess, he would stand at the fence for like 30 minutes just watching the kids. Bro, go home. Why are you still here? Aren't you dropping her off because you have to like go to work or you have somewhere to be? And then at the end of the day, when he would come to pick up, he would just hang out for 30, 45 minutes, an hour. Do you not have anywhere else to be, anywhere better to be than to hang out at your child's center? Also didn't help that this man drove a white van. No, I'm not kidding. One day he came to pick her up and it was fall time. And this is, like I said, when I first started teaching. So I was very like, oh my God, dressed like a teacher, you know? As time went on, I stopped caring what I was wearing. He comes in and instead of being like, hi, how are you? First thing he says is, that's a really cute skirt. I mean, thanks, but like you're 54 years old. It just made me really uncomfortable. Their daughter was also incredibly smart. One of probably the smartest children I ever worked with. A little creepy how smart she was. I feel like it was for a reason. First year of my 4-year journey being with this child, she was full sentences, like knew things that a 2-year-old shouldn't know. By the time I moved up and I was in the preschool room, she was also in the preschool room. She was doing things like, or saying things like, well, my daddy lets me do that at home. My mommy lets me do that at home, and I don't have to listen to you because my mom says I can do that. Full on like lying, manipulative, like, and again, extremely smart, reading, counting to like 50, and like, you're 3.5 years old. How do you know all of this stuff? It made me question, like, if anything is going on at home, she would be so well trained to lie about it. That's just like kind of where my brain was going with it. And again, like I said, anytime I brought up any of her behaviors, any of her parents' behaviors, all my coworkers, all my admin, my directors were like, sometimes they'd be like, yeah, that's a little weird. But most of the time they were like, yeah, they're just weird people. Like, nothing's wrong about it. Like, there's nothing you can say or do about it. They're not doing anything wrong. It was a couple years ago, so I don't remember all the details about it, but I do remember that I kept being so discouraged because my boss didn't want us, like, personally calling CPS. She wanted to always be the one who did it, but nothing ever came back on us. So I remember always being, like, verbally discouraged by everybody from doing or saying anything because nobody saw anything that I was seeing. Because I guess it was mostly just vibes for me. I don't know. And I can't remember what exactly happened that set me off or pushed me over the edge. But one day on my lunch break, I did go and report them. And from that point on, I think they knew it was me because they stopped saying hi to me in the hallways for like a good year. After that, nothing ever happened. And they still creep me out, so I just hope that little girl's okay.
I inherited a hunting cabin from my grandfather. The guest book is a bit strange. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepy Pasta. Let's get into today's scary story. My grandfather lived a long life. For the last 10 years of his life, a lot of us actually started making bets about when he'd die. It may sound macabre to some of you, but to us, it was all just a big joke. He'd laugh just like we did, even making a few bets himself to add to the fun. Ultimately, though, none of us cashed out. He lived to be 100 years old. His mind stayed young all the way to the very end, but it was still pretty devastating to watch his body become frail and brittle. For the most part, my family more celebrated his life than mourned it. I mean, it's difficult to feel shocked when someone whose age is in the triple digits dies. We still missed him, though, of course. His stories, his laugh, his presence all together. The thing that I missed the most, though, was hearing about his hunting trips. It became almost like a tradition, going over to visit him after he got back from a week out in the woods. He'd always make me some sweet tea and cook us up some of his famous fried chicken, and we'd sit for hours while he rambled about his hunt. It was like talking about it was one of the greatest joys in his life. His eyes would get warm. He'd speak softly once he started, but as he continued, his old voice would grow louder, more theatrical as he enunciated specific events. One of the bastards almost got away. Hunted him down all week. Finally caught him. Got some nice steaks out of it too. Every visit after these trips, he'd send me out with bags of meat. Steaks, chops, hell, even some beef jerky if he had some handy. It was like our thing. Of all his grandchildren, I was the only one who cared to listen. It came as no surprise to me when he left me that cabin. He always told me he would. Told me I was the only one who'd care enough to use it. When I got told it was officially mine, I just honestly couldn't wait to see the thing. He kept it so private. It was like his private place, somewhere he could go to escape the noise, and he wanted to pass that on to me. Needless to say, I couldn't have been happier. On the drive to the cabin, I felt a sense of warmth in my soul as suburbia turned into sprawling acres of trees and wildlife. It was about a 2-hour drive, but I didn't care. All I wanted was to see it, and when I did, my mouth fell open. It was gorgeous. Stained oak wood, a beautiful handcrafted porch swing, and a flower bed that expanded across the length of the porch. The cabin overlooked the river, was surrounded by nothing but trees, and the serenity of it made me realize why it meant so much to my grandfather. The first thing I did was cook up some of his famous fried chicken. I enjoyed it along with a glass of sweet tea as I took in the beauty of the interior. The hardwood floors were completely scuff-free. There seemed to be a deer head hanging on every wall. The smell was of pine and mountain air, and my favorite part, by far, was the fireplace. Well, that and the fact that the cabin itself was remarkably clean. I honestly wish I could have sat by a fire and just reminisced on life or whatever, but in the midsummer heat, a fire would have been insanity. So I just sat there, eating my chicken by an empty fireplace while I thought about my grandpa. As I ate, I couldn't help but notice a book that sat on the mantel above the fireplace. I cocked my head at it. The spine didn't have anything embroidered on it, but when I picked it up, I could see that it was a guest book. Grandpa never mentioned hunting with anybody when he came up here, so automatically I knew something was strange. I opened the book, and to my surprise, nearly every page had been filled. Mark DeSantis, January 6, 1973. Stubborn bastard. Emily Rees, December 18th, 1976. Quick, but not quick enough. David Clifford, February 9th, 1980. Nearly reached the river. Each name contained a date. I don't know why I didn't think anything of it. I was curious, sure, but not as terrified as I should have been. Even still, I carried that curiosity back home with me, back to civilization, and back to cellular service. The name David Clifford stuck with me for some reason. I could have sworn I'd seen it before. I looked it up, not knowing what to expect. But what I read has made me think of my grandfather a bit differently, because apparently, David Clifford went missing in Appalachia more than 46 years ago, February 6th, 1980.
Ouija boards are not a joke. I'm going to tell you a story from when I was a kid. It's pretty unnerving. I was at one of my friends' houses that lived down the street. A few of my other friends were there too. We're, drinking Kool-Aid, goofing off. It's middle of the night. We're playing Modern Warfare 2 like the good old days. One of us had the bright idea to get out the Ouija board. So we got it out and we do it correctly. Like, we really had it set up the right way with the quarters on the board, the candles, the dim lighting, and there's like a thing that you got to say to activate it. We did it all by the books. There was one problem. We couldn't figure out whether or not one of us in the group was moving the handle and like playing a joke on everybody else. So we were like, okay, let's test it. We're going to test the Ouija board. Let's see if it's real. Let's see if there is something in the room with us. We get a piece of paper and we get a pen. One person at a time. So just one of us would step out of the bedroom where we had the Ouija board activity going on. And we'd go into the kitchen and we would write a number, 1 through 10. That is only in your head. Could be 1.7, or it could have been 8, or 7, or 6, or 5, right? And then you would go back into the room, hold that piece of paper crumpled up in your hand. Only you know it, you didn't say it, and you just stood in the corner. And then we would ask the Ouija board what the number was. We all did it. 10 out of 10 times, it got it correct. Then we asked the board where the entity that we were talking to was from. And sure enough, it starts to spell out H, and then it slowly moves to E. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, H-E, then A, right? L. That is my story with Ouija boards. I can't for the life of me understand why they are sold in places like Toys R Us or Target or Walmart. That is insane.
Trigger warning, go ahead and scroll. If you don't like paranormal, you don't like scary stuff, you're not going to want to listen to the story. I have another scary story submission that we're going to get ready to read. Can I just say first, though, all the submissions I've been getting from Michigan, as a fellow Michigander, I'm shocked at how many little towns that I've never heard of. Anyways, the email reads, Casey, I think your Great Lakes videos are the reason that people keep sending you these stories, or maybe the reason that people have finally started admitting to them. Either way, after watching all of the submissions you've gotten recently from people around Michigan, I need to tell you what happened to us near Whitefish Point. Please don't use my real name. You can call me Lauren. My family has had a place outside of Paradise for most of my life. It's not some creepy abandoned cabin in the middle of nowhere. It's a normal house. We have neighbors. I've been going there since I was little, and Lake Superior has never scared me, but it does now. My husband and I went up for a long weekend before everything started closing down for the season. One night, we drove toward Whitefish Point and walked down by the lake. It was freezing and almost completely dark. We were probably on the beach for about 20 minutes when my husband just stopped talking. Thought he saw an animal or something. Then he pointed down the shoreline and said, "Is that guy okay?" There was somebody standing in the water, not swimming, standing, probably 50 to 60 feet away from us and far enough out that the water should have been at least up around his chest. But I could see almost his entire body. It's the first thing I don't know how to explain. It looked like he was standing on the bottom. The proportions made absolutely no sense. He was facing the lake with his back towards us. My husband yelled, "Hey!" Nothing. He yelled again. The person slowly turned his head. Just his head. His shoulders did not move. I immediately grabbed my husband's arm because something about this was wrong. Then that person started walking toward the shore. I know people exaggerate when they're scared, so I want to explain this exactly how I remember it. He wasn't swimming. He wasn't struggling against the waves. He was walking. And as he came towards us, more and more of his body appeared above the water. Except it took way too long. His legs were too long. I mean, way too long. My husband whispered, "Get in the car." We turned around and started fast walking toward the path. That's when we heard splashing behind us. Not footsteps. It sounded more like something heavy dragging itself through shallow water. Then it stopped. We didn't turn around. We got into the car, locked the doors. My husband started it, and before he could even put it in reverse, somebody knocked on my passenger window 3 times. I turned so hard my throat hurt for days after. There had been nobody there. My husband backed out so fast he almost went off-road. Neither of us spoke until we were several miles away. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. He said, "Did you see its face?" I hadn't, but he had. He had told me it looked swollen. Not swollen like a living person, bloated. Somebody who had been underwater. We went back to the house and spent the rest of the night trying to convince ourselves somebody had just been messing with us. And around 2 a.m, I woke up because somebody was walking around outside of our bedroom, crunching through the gravel. Slowly, I could hear them clear as day. One side of the house, then the other. Then it stopped directly underneath our window. I woke up my husband. We listened. Nothing. Then 3 knocks came from the bedroom window. My husband grabbed his phone and turned the outside lights on. Nothing was there. But the next morning, there were footprints underneath the window, bare feet, and they didn't lead to the house. That's what I need you to understand. There weren't footprints across the yard. They started directly underneath our bedroom window. From there, they went around the side of the house, across the driveway, and towards the woods. While my husband was loading the car, I started Googling Whitefish Point because obviously I knew there were shipwrecks around there, but I had no idea just how many. That's when I found something I really wish I hadn't. Casey, you can actually look this part up. Whitefish Point sits along an approximately 80-mile stretch of Lake Superior shoreline, literally known as Shipwreck Coast. There are hundreds of wrecks in Lake Superior, and more than 200 major wrecks are reportedly around Whitefish Point. And the Edmund Fitzgerald isn't even close to being the only ship that has just disappeared out there. One of them was the Adela Shores. 14 men disappeared with that ship in 1909. No survivors, no witnesses. For more than a century, nobody even knew where it was. It was eventually discovered in more than 600 feet of water. I was sitting in the passenger seat reading all of this when my husband suddenly slammed on his brakes. There was a man standing on the side of the road, barefoot, soaking wet, miles from where we'd been on the lake. We'd passed him before either of us really processed what we had seen. My husband didn't stop. Maybe 10 seconds later, I looked in the passenger mirror. There was nobody behind us. We haven't stayed at the house since. My husband's brother went up there in May to check out everything. We never told him what happened. Not one word. He called us his first night there. Sounded irritated more than scared. The first thing he said was, "Who the hell keeps knocking on the windows?" My husband went completely silent. Then his brother said something else. He said that there had been some weird guy outside earlier. He had seen him standing on the edge of the woods watching the house. My husband asked what he looked like. His brother said, "I don't know. Tall. His clothes were all wet." Then he laughed. Actually, really fucking tall. We immediately told him to leave. He thought that we were being ridiculous, but eventually he did. A few weeks ago, we finally decided to sell the property. The realtor went through to take some pictures and called me that night because she thought somebody had broken in. Nothing was stolen, nothing was damaged, but there was water all over the upstairs hallway. Not a leak, not a puddle underneath the pipe, bare wet footprints. I haven't told the realtor what happened, haven't told anybody except my husband. But after seeing all of these Great Lakes stories people have been sending you, I'm starting to wonder if people around here have been seeing these things like this for a lot longer than anyone talks about. So I guess that's why I'm sending this. Has anyone in Michigan from around Whitefish Point, Paradise, or anywhere around that part of Lake Superior ever heard stories about people seeing wet men away from the shoreline? Because there's one detail my husband refused to tell me until last week. When that thing turned around in the water the first night and he saw its face, he said its eyes were open, its mouth was open, and there was something hanging out of it. When it started walking towards us, he'd realized it wasn't hanging out of its mouth. It was moving. He said there were fingers coming out of its mouth. Human fingers. Like somebody was inside trying to crawl out. And that is the part that made me decide to send this to you. First of all, thank you so much for trusting me to share your story on my page. I've never heard of Whitefish Point. I've never been there in my life. I'm learning that there's so many things about Michigan I had no idea of, and I thought I knew basically everything about Michigan because I'm born, raised, and currently live here still. If any of you around that area have any experiences, let me know in the comments. Or you can also send your scary story into the email above for a chance for me to read it here on my page. The amount of submissions from Michigan that I've gotten lately are insane. I'm even learning more about like the Michigan Triangle, which I guess is like comparable to the Bermuda. We have our own version of the Loch Ness Monster. So apparently Michigan's got a lot more spooky going on than we realize. But anyways, if you want to hear more paranormal stories, make sure to go ahead and give me a follow. As always, thank you for watching. Love you. Bye.
I took this picture around 6:30 in the morning because I kept hearing what sounded like somebody walking downstairs. I figured that I was just being paranoid, so I snapped a random photo of the living room to send to my friend as a joke, since we both don't believe in ghosts. A few minutes later, I looked back at the photo and noticed what looked like someone standing in the hallway. I genuinely don't remember seeing anyone there when I took it. I went to check the hallway immediately, turned on every light, checked every room, and there was nobody there. I still have no explanation for what's in this picture. This video was recorded back in December of 2024 in Malaysia by my school guard. He insisted that there was nobody in the school area because it was already sunset. In the video, you can hear the guard saying that the entity wants him to know that it's there.
Tuhan tengok di bilik tengok. Sedangkan bilik tu katuk je, aircon apa semua. Bukan berangin pun. Tengok yang dia duduk intai.
This photo was taken in 2017 in the Philippines. Me and my cousins were playing basketball and rested for a while to try B612 filters. Unknowingly, something else joined in the photo. I posted this photo on my Facebook, and the next day, my cousin pointed out that a creepy face was caught by the left side. We don't know what it is or who it was.
I don't know if I did the right thing. It was after midnight. I was the manager of a Taco Bell closing shift, and we had just locked the doors. So we thought we did. And I'm working on somebody's food, and I look over, and there's a woman standing next to the door that I thought was locked. Now, usually when people find a door that's unlocked, they come in, it'll be like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they'll try to order food when the lobby is closed and we got to tell them to leave. So I stop what I'm doing and I go over to tell this girl, and she immediately runs over to the bathrooms. That's pretty weird. Now, I'm a pretty tall guy, I'm 6'2", and I get the vibe that if I go over there, I'm just gonna scare this girl. So I get my coworker, who's a woman, to go over there and talk to her. And I go about my business. Eventually my coworker comes back and she says, "Zach, that girl was terrified. And she had a spot this big of blood on the side of her head." I'm the manager, I'm supposed to know what to do, so I'm thinking, do I call the cops? But before I can say anything, my coworker says, "I offered to give her my phone if you wanted to call the cops." And the girl said, "No, I want to call my mom." So the girl called her mom, and we locked the door, right? I'm thinking, you know, whatever happened there, she ran away from someone, I don't know. The girl wouldn't talk about it, and I was afraid to go over there and scare her even more. And so she waited there until her mom came, and then she left, and that was it. And I don't know if that was the right thing to do. I mean, she could have called the cops, right? Should I have? Would that have made things worse? I don't know. I think about it sometimes. Tell me what you think in the comments.
I have another scary Appalachian story for you guys tonight, and you are going to want to hear this one. This story was sent to me by Sunny. They don't live in the Appalachians, but they were out visiting and had a horrifying experience happen to them. So you know the drill. Grab a drink, grab a cozy blanket, and settle in while I tell you a scary story in my garden after dark. Welcome to Ghosts in the Garden. A quick side note before we get started. Some of you may have noticed I don't have my usual garden hat on. Devastatingly, it got left out in the rain and it no longer functions. It just flops forward. So if anyone has any garden hat recommendations, please send them my way. I need a new one and I am so sad to have lost the original. So hopefully you'll be seeing me with a new hat soon. But let's get to the story. Hi Riley, this story is one I've been debating sending for a while now. My name is Sunny and I live in Houston, very far from Appalachia. However, this story happened to me while I was visiting the Appalachian Mountains with my family in June, visiting a college that my brother was going to attend. When we arrived, nothing felt strange. The cabin was old, but not in a creepy way. The floors were creaky, the walls were covered with old paneling, and there were handwritten notes by the previous guests telling people where to find extra blankets and firewood. My parents were worn out and tired from the trip, so we all decided to head to bed. My brother and I were sharing a room that had a bunk bed in it, and we were going back and forth on who gets what bunk. I decided to take the top. That night, my parents went to bed very early, but my brother Alex and I decided to stay up late and watch movies and talk for a bit. Ironically, we decided to watch The Conjuring for about the 700th time because it's one of my favorite movies. I should probably add here that my brother and I are horror movie and paranormal geeks, so we've heard lots of stories online about Appalachia, but never took them seriously. My brother, however, was not familiar with the rules you see. It's also important to note that my brother is an avid whistler. He even won awards for his whistling skills, so it wasn't that out of the ordinary to hear random whistling throughout the house. I still remember when my brother was 8, he whistled in his sleep. All of that being said, that night I went downstairs to microwave some popcorn, and I could smell the distinct popcorn smell and the warmth radiating from the microwave. Out of nowhere, the house turned so cold that the hair on the back of my neck stood up. That's when I heard whistling coming from the front door. The whistle sounded so much like my brother's that I didn't even question it at first. It wasn't until I walked back upstairs and saw him sitting on the bed that I realized that he could not have been downstairs. When I saw my brother, he looked pale as a ghost staring at the window. I asked him what was wrong and he said, "You don't see it?" very slowly and very quietly. I turned around, but there was nothing at the window. I thought he was just trying to scare me as siblings do, so I brushed it off. But just to be sure, I drew the curtain shut. Halfway through the movie, I remembered the whistling and decided to ask him about it. His face went pale. He insisted that he had not whistled, and for the rest of the night, neither of us could explain what I'd heard. At the same time that I was hearing this whistling, he told me that he saw a tall, dark silhouette by the window with very long nails and yellow eyes. That's when I looked back at the window and saw that the curtains had been drawn back open. Not even a second after I saw the curtains, the power went out. The house was pitch black, and so my brother and I decided to look for his phone to turn on his flashlight. While I was feeling around the bed for his phone, I suddenly got an overwhelming feeling that someone was standing right behind me. I even turned around because I was so sure that someone was there and breathing down my neck, but there was not anyone. Nothing could have prepared us for what we saw once my brother turned on his flashlight. He turned it on without thinking, and the beam swept across the doorway. For a split second, I thought I saw something standing there just beyond the frame. I couldn't make out a face, but I did see what looked like pale, bony fingers wrapped around the corner and yellow eyes. The light shook as my brother froze, and then it was gone. I remember smelling something strange, almost like rotten eggs. Immediately, we looked at each other, started screaming, and my parents came running upstairs. At that same moment, the power came back on, and that thing was no longer there. My parents didn't believe it when we told them what we had saw, and thought that we had just spooked ourselves by watching a scary movie. I honestly can't blame them. If I was alone and it happened to me, I would have thought it was just my imagination. My brother remembers that night almost exactly the way that I do, which is the only reason that I've never been able to completely write it off. Nothing as intense as that happened for the rest of the trip, but the other 3 nights that we were there, I would still hear whistling from the woods. To this day, I still don't know what happened at that cabin. Maybe the movie put us on edge, and maybe there was a perfectly normal explanation for everything. But every now and then, when I hear my brother whistling from another room, I still catch myself wondering if it's really him. The whistling, combined with the creature you saw in the Appalachians, I don't know exactly what it was, but I really don't wish to find out. If you guys have any ideas, please drop them into the comments for Sunny, but I second guess constantly wanting to visit the Appalachian Mountains. If you have your own story, please feel free to send it to me. I would love to read it. Otherwise, I will see you out here in the dark in my garden on another night for another scary story. Bye.
Let's talk about when people work in haunted houses. This is an absolutely chilling story from Shane, who has worked in a haunted house for the last 5 years. The haunt that he works for was originally a large mansion that was owned by a very wealthy family in this town. It's important to note that the owners of this home in the 1800s in the house, people, specifically scare actors and customers, have said that they see paranormal activity happening in this house all the time. Another scare actor that Shane worked with actually told him about this story where she was getting ready to open. And if you're not familiar with how a haunt is set up, you basically get all your makeup, all your costumes on, and then you are sent into the house maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes before the house actually opens. That way scare actors can get ready to give a good show. Someone that was working with Shane says that she was getting ready. It was a couple minutes before opening, and all of a sudden she sees this man walking down the hallway. She knew it wasn't another scare actor because they were not in makeup, not in costume, and she knew that it was not a customer because they're not open yet. Obviously being scared, she called one of the security guards up to go and check the room that the man had walked into, and the security guard found nothing. Nobody was in that room, and it did not look like anyone walked into that room. Continuation to the stories about this haunt, there was another security guard that witnessed a ghost-like entity standing in front of him in old-fashioned clothing when all of a sudden they just disappeared into thin air. What's interesting to me is that he was the only one that saw this entity in front of him during open hours. The rest of the people that were standing with him didn't see this thing at all. He and his sister, who also works there, have seen objects move, doors close, floorboards creak, and not in the house is settling kind of way. And I particularly really like this story because there was a haunted house in my hometown called Mystery Manor that was very well known to be an actual haunted house, not just something that comes up during Halloween. I'm pretty sure Mystery Manor isn't a thing anymore, but my mom actually worked there and could confirm that Mystery Manor was haunted, that the scare actors would see things that happen in the house that just don't make sense. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for our ghost stories.
Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that their mother went back to South Africa to make deals with mermaid spirits. I am back with another spooky story. I'm gonna call the person who submitted the story Nina. Nina said at the time that this took place, she was a little bit too young to understand. But as she got older, she started to make more and more sense of things. At the time, Nina was about 9 years old when her father left. Her father abandoned their family for another woman, who was the breadwinner, so when he left, the family was struggling. At the time, everything was in Nina's father's name. Nina, her siblings, and her mom had to downsize to a one-bedroom apartment. Her mother at the time was working full-time to try to take care of everybody, but bills were piling up. It's hard for one woman to take care of 4 kids. In Nina's family, they have history with mermaid spirits. However, Nina's mom was adamant about not getting involved in that lifestyle. She really did not participate. However, after her husband left, her back was pushed against the wall. One day, she flew back to South Africa. Her mom spoke to one of the elder women in her family. Nina's mother told the elder that she wanted to officially be initiated. They did an initiation ritual on the beach. What was supposed to be a week trip turned into a month. After they performed the ritual, the mother started having dreams about mermaid spirits coming to her. Really wasn't anything much at first. This was completely normal. Then the dreams turned into a feeling that she had to follow. One night, Nina's mother woke up in the middle of the night, walked out of the house, and went straight into the ocean. She was gone for about a week. At the time of her disappearance, her kids back home don't know any of it. The people at home are not freaking out that she's gone. Apparently, if you freak out, they won't come back. Eventually, a week later, she did come back. She was instructed to stay in South Africa for a little bit longer. Her mother says that she has seen a lot underwater. However, she is not to describe or talk about those things till Nina is ready to experience it herself. Mother came back home, and just 3 months after her return, everything changed. Mother's struggling business suddenly went viral and took off. It just seems like things were just working out. Business was doing well, so well. They moved out into a new house. Everybody had their own room. Mom has a really nice car. Even bought the eldest a car too. They were living more lavish than they were when they were with Nina's father. However, Nina's mother was no stranger to the fact that everything comes with a price. Well, now her mother has to do a yearly offering. Wealth only continues if she returns to the water. A specific night each year leaves something valuable. Another small thing, spirits visit her mother very often. She has to be 100% completely devoted to them, or else everything goes away, or worst. Nina says that she doesn't know if she'll personally get into it because it seems like a lot. But obviously, fate has a funny way of catching up to you. Thank you for submitting this spooky story. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to submit it to me right here on TikTok or DM it to me on Instagram. At the end of all of my videos, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl. I did the fuck out of that.
Mother claims that when she was a teenager, she went out dancing with elf-like people at a bar that wasn't there the next day. This submission to Spooky Scary Storytime came from someone named Shiham, and he says that his mother Doreen was born in 1972 in Cape Town, South Africa. And while Shiham wasn't around when this happened, he said this story shocked him. To this day, his mother swears this really happened. And so his mother was born in West Bank in Cape Town, South Africa, and back then the area was quiet with only a few houses, and it was mostly a rural community with just a few people in the town. Lots of open fields around the general area where they lived. And when Doreen was 15 years old, her mother was at work and she was home alone with her brothers and sisters, and Doreen wanted to go out with some of her friends, but she knew that her mother wouldn't allow her to go out while she wasn't home. Her mother was very strict. So Doreen's friends came over, and after they got there, they convinced her to sneak out, and they were like, we found this new spot. It's this new place that we walked past on our way over here, and it just opened up in West Bank. It's in a field by the cemetery. Doreen was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. And she smoked cigarettes at the time, and she had a pack of cigarettes with her. So she sneaks out with her friends. They walk back in the direction of the cemetery, and they come up on this bar-like place that seemed new. None of them had ever seen it there before. She says she described it as small and wooden, with wooden tables and chairs and a really nice smell she couldn't explain. But she said the people in the pub didn't look human, or at least didn't seem human. They were small, almost like elves, and they all had a strange smell. But Doreen and her friends didn't care at first, and they started drinking and smoking, because, you know what, who cares if these people didn't seem like people they knew. One of these elf-like people came up to Doreen and actually asked her for a cigarette. Doreen said she gave him one, and then everyone started dancing together. And back then, she said that there was something called the sand dances, in which people danced in the sand until their shoes were dusty. And she told Shiham that at this pub, there weren't tile or wooden floors. The entire floor was sand, as if they had just built 4 walls and a roof. Doreen said that everyone danced the whole night until one of her friends kept saying that she wanted to go. She said, there's just something off about these people. I don't know what it is. I think it's more than just they don't look like us. Apparently, she said something about they're not even speaking in a way that humans communicate. And I'm not sure what she meant by this, but overall, she just had this strange feeling and she wanted to leave. But Doreen didn't want to leave because she was having the time of her life, and she was having more fun than she would sitting at home by herself with her siblings. Eventually, I don't know how much time had passed, she realizes how much time has actually passed, and she panics because she knows that her mom is now home from work and that her mom's going to be super angry at her for staying out so late. She picks it up, hightails it home, and when she got back to her house, she noticed that everyone in her house was already asleep. Apparently, the next morning, her mother asked her, like, where were you all night? I sat up waiting for you. You didn't get home until God knows what hour. And Doreen tells her the whole story, and she's like, we found this bar that just opened, and I'm so sorry, and I won't do it again. But her mother knew that she was lying because she's like, I pass that place every day on my way to work. There is no bar there. And Doreen's like, no, I swear to you, that's where I was. Like, I'm not lying to you. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. But apparently the night before, her mother had gotten a ride home from work from a coworker and had not taken the usual route. So it's up for debate if the bar was ever actually there to begin with. So Doreen's like, no, I'll prove it to you. I will take you there. And so they go out walking and they head back in the direction of the cemetery, and they get there and there's no pub. In his email, he said there was no building, no pub, no sign that anything had ever been there. The only things left were the half-smoked cigarette butts on the ground and the footprints in the sand from where they had danced all night. Apparently, the footprints included tiny footprints, which they were never able to attribute to anyone. He says that to this day, his mother and his grandmother believe that she had danced with the spirits of the cemetery all night. I don't know what these creatures were, but interesting story nonetheless. Let me know your thoughts. He will be seeing the comments.
Imagine staying in your hotel room thinking that everything is okay, only to turn around and see a tall, dark figure that has been lurking behind you all this time. It all started when a hotel kept getting calls from this exact room right here. Okay, so what? Maybe the person inside it needed some help, I don't know, so he called the reception. Well, the problem is nobody is supposed to be in that room. Yes, the room is locked and empty. Nobody actually booked it, so who is calling? Well, that's exactly what they wanted to know. So the staff of the hotel sent 2 employees, 2 poor employees, and they were like, go over there to check what's happening. And that's exactly what happened. The 2 employees went to the room and entered it. When they entered the room, they started looking around and everything seemed normal. They even filmed the phone to show that it didn't even move. So who is doing this? Or most importantly, why does this keep happening? They kept looking around, they couldn't find a possible explanation, so they were like, okay, you know what, let's just say that the device is broken. I mean, it's logical. Yes, it is, but that's not the entire story, because it's not exactly what happened. Because even though the calls stopped, like yes, the reception is no longer getting calls from this room right here, whenever somebody approaches this room, well, they will hear weird noises coming from the inside, but the problem stays the same. Whenever they open it and check inside, nothing is there. Few days later, a new team of employees got sent to that same room, but this time it was actually to change the furniture. Weird thing that happened in this room this time is that the lights stopped working, just like that. One of the employees was actually filming because, you know, I understand them working with no lights in a weird ass room must be creepy. It was in this exact moment right here from this exact angle that you can see a tall dark figure appearing behind them. The scary part is that it was right here all the time and they didn't even notice it until later when they checked the videos.
Okay. There's the phone. No one's calling, no one's here. Everything's chilling.
A part of me only wants to make this video so that I can get this picture out of my phone. If you get scared easily, maybe come back and watch this in the morning. This is your warning. This lady says that it is very known that in her house they have this woman ghost. So there was one night where they had a party. Everybody was super drunk and somebody took a picture. In this picture, right smack in the middle of everybody partying, dancing, and having fun, there is a face of a lady and her eyes are just glowing. They went around to their friends asking who this woman was because nobody recognized her, nobody remembered her being at that party, and of course nobody said that they remember seeing this woman there. So this is the picture. Again, everybody's drunk, everyone looks like they're having so much fun. Let's just zoom in a little bit. What the fuck? What are you looking at me for? I don't know. You just look at the picture. What? You wanted it to zoom in all the way? Oh my god. I don't know what it is about this picture. I'm looking at myself. I'm not looking up there. I'm not. This is creepy as fuck. You cannot tell me that's not creepy. I think the worst part about it is that no one is acknowledging her. Look at everybody around. Everyone is acknowledging one person. They all seem like the type of people who are like conversing with their friends, looking at something. Why is she just, or whoever that is, just there? And why does it look like that? Sorry, fuck. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
We're here to see if this bathroom's haunted. Got a DM from someone called Tia. She said her mum works in a health centre and this is the bathroom attached to it. And when she's alone in the office closing, the door to this bathroom, which looks pretty heavy actually, bangs shut all on its own. She also said that the lights turn off and on in the hallway going towards the toilets too. Something really creepy happened. Where is it? Oh, she said another co-worker tried to push on the door to go into the toilet and it pushed back. She thought someone was in the toilet, but when going in, there was nobody there. So let's do it, shall we? I'm going to tune into this photo of the toilet using my clairvoyance and clairaudience, see if any information can come through. I haven't done this in a while, so I might be a little rusty, so we'll just see what comes through no matter what, okay? No pressure. I'm very drawn to this window though, just as I'm sort of looking at the photo as a whole. So welcome to tune in alongside me. I mean, I encourage you to. I just ask that if you do, please put whatever comes through for you in the comments. We just don't know what information I could miss that you could pick up and vice versa. So if we all sort of tackle it together, then at least we'll be getting more information than nothing, if you know what I mean. So I just need to remind you that I'll never DM you offering readings. I only book readings in through my website and those book up super quickly whenever they're released. So I don't have the spare time to DM people asking or offering to do readings. So if you get a DM like that, it's from a scammer, it's not from me. So I'm just going to tune in now and see what can come through. Okay, I'm just going to ask Archangel Michael, he's saying it's been a while, yes it has, asking Archangel Michael to protect me and anyone else watching this video. I just heard straight off from him, not that we're protected, but I heard that it's a child that's locked inside and wants to get out. We'll see if when I actually tune in, if that lines up. It might not. Typically, though, whenever he makes these little comments, they seem to really align. So we'll see. Are you protecting us? He's showing me helmet, putting it on under the chin. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm hearing a little girl's voice. I'm hearing, I lost my mummy. She's looking around the corner, like looking down into the office, and she's pointing. She's saying she works in there. I weirdly feel like she's hidden in here. But I was just about to say, I don't know if you can see from the original DM, but Tia said that it's a community building. Yeah, it's a community health center. Okay. And it's pretty old. All right. Shit. Okay. Okay. I just asked if she passed away here, and I heard it's the last place she can remember. And I'm just seeing like this young girl, I'm getting a very itchy neck, a young girl sort of going in and out of consciousness, like she's quite faint. A lot of stomach issues with the bowels, very loose bowels. I don't know, I might be guessing, but I just feel like she's very dehydrated, or at least people helping thought she was dehydrated because of that condition, but maybe there was something more going on. Yeah, she's giving me nods. Why am I feeling towards meningitis? She's saying I couldn't move my neck. Okay. She just wants her mummy. She's pointing down the hall. She's saying she's down the hall. She's not just showing me her, oh, my neck. She's not just showing me her like pushing back against the bathroom door. She's showing me going up on it like this, like trying to knock on it like this. I'm just hearing she'll be worried. She'll be looking for me. I just had a smell come through, which is interesting because I never really experienced clear aliens, which is clear smelling. It's gone now, but it's almost like some kind of herb or like herbal tea. Smelled a little bit like, but wasn't. I wonder if it was the synthetic kind though. I wonder why that sort of brought back, or why that's come to mind for me. Yeah, I'm seeing people rush in, and this little girl is sort of like has fainted or is fainting, and she's just sort of limply in someone's arms. I don't think she's passed there. I don't think she's passed yet, but she's very weak. What can Tia's mum do? She's being asked to be like rubbed on the head. I don't know if Tia's mum could do that. She's showing me a book. She's showing me Spot. You know the book Spot? she looks to be like 4 or 5 or 6. Like, she's quite young. And I was just sort of thinking to myself, is Spot, like that little children's book, would it be too young for her? But I don't think so. She's showing me a kiss on the forehead as well. What can she do for you? I'm hearing, tell my mummy I'm okay. I'm hearing that, like I hear that from her. However, if there's part of her or like part of her trauma that sort of stayed behind in this bathroom, I'm struggling to know how both can exist. Yeah, I'm hearing, I just want my mummy, I just want to go home. Very intrigued to see if anyone else saw anything more. She looks like, when I try and focus in on her, I can't see much. Like, I feel very out of it right now. Like sometimes I see that her hair is a light brown, dark blondie color, but then sometimes I look at her and she's got like darker skin. So it's like she's sort of changing in my mind's eye, and that confuses me a little bit. I just sort of asked for her to show me something that could relate to her name. It's something that I'm doing in my own readings because I'm learning the language of getting names. I mostly get personality and memories at this point, but I saw the front of the book of Angelina the ballerina. So that could be anything to do with Angelina. Maybe her name starts with A or B, or maybe even the author of Angelina Ballerina could have something to do with her name. Also hearing Port Macquarie. I don't know if that has much to do with anything. I know that's in Australia. I assume this is in Australia. If you guys have any questions for her, let me know and I'll try and tune in and see what else can come through. I know I haven't done these readings in a while. I had a lot going on in my personal life, as well as working on some missing persons cases in my spare time. So I just haven't had the capacity to do this. But I'll be putting more videos up here of this sort of thing, and I'll be putting more videos up of extended readings on my YouTube as well as reviewing all the footage that I took when I visited my home that I lived in a past life. So check out my YouTube here if you like.
Do you guys want to hear a scary story? So for a quick context, I used to babysit for an extremely haunted house. There's 2 girls. Oh, this one I call Luna, then this one I call Aura for the sake of privacy for their actual names. And Luna had an imaginary friend that was actually a real-life demon. Particular night, I had put the girls to bed and everything had been going fairly smooth, right? Like throughout the day. I didn't really have any hiccups. And so I put them to sleep and I realized I'm like sitting there watching TV after they go to bed. I'm probably 16, 15 years old at this point. And I swear I can hear somebody talking, and it's coming from the hallway of where the girls' rooms were. And so I remember I muted the TV, and I'm listening, and it sounded like Luna was talking. So at first I was like not annoyed that she wasn't going to bed. I knew that Pete was like her best imaginary friend at the time, so I'm instantly scared, but I know I have to check it out. So I'm walking over to the rooms, right? First I look into Aura's room, the younger one, completely passed out, asleep. Then, because Luna's room is right across, so it's like Aura's room, Luna's room. I can hear Luna talking in her room. So I take a deep breath and I walk into her room. Sorry, it cut off. So I go into her room and I see immediately she's sitting on the end, like the side of her bed, with her feet hanging over and her hands are like this, and she's whispering and she's talking, and I'm like, shit. So she notices me because I'm like, hey. She whipped her head over to me, and I remember she looked like she was smiling with her mouth, but her eyes weren't smiling exactly. And I was like, what are you doing, baby? Like, who are you talking to? Why are your hands out like this? And she says to me, Pete wants to know if he can borrow your hands for a minute. If he can borrow your hands for a minute. And I'm like, no. I'm like, no, babe, Pete cannot hold my hand. I'm like, you need to go back to bed. It's late. Like, we're not doing all this right now. And she's like, okay, he'll give it to me and I'll show you. I'm like, no, I don't need to see it. I don't need to see it. I'm going to just tuck you back in. And she's still sitting there with her hands, or not standing, sitting on the end of the bed like this. And so I walk over to her and I'm like trying to get her to lay down. And she goes, here, can you take it? Holds her hands out and I don't see anything in her hands. And I get a little concerned. I'm like, baby, are you okay? Like, are you dreaming? Talk to me. What's going on? There's nothing in your hands. She gets irritated with me. And she's like, what do you mean? Pete put it in my hand for you. What are you talking about? You're like, just freaks out. She's a kid. And I'm just not having it right. So I spent some time with her. I calm her down because she was upset. Read her another story. The whole time I'm doing this, I feel like I'm being watched. But I get her to go back to sleep. I stayed with her and I rubbed her back like till she fell asleep because I wasn't taking any chances. I didn't want her being woken up by Pete. Like this demonic entity keeping this child up. It just awful, right? She goes back to bed. So at this point, I'm like waiting to see if she's fully asleep. She is. So I take a deep breath. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back out into the living room. And so I start walking down the hallway. Because like I said, it was their rooms here, and then there was like a hallway, and then you go that way, and it was living room, kitchen, master bedroom, all that in a loft or something. But I go to walk out, and as I turn the long hallway to go back to the living room, for only a couple seconds, I see Pete. He's standing at the very end of the hallway, and his hands, it makes me gag thinking about it. His hands are like this, and he just has the most crooked smile on his face. His head is tilted this way. He's tall. It's... Ugh. I closed my eyes, I opened them, and he was gone. So, to this day, I have no clue what Pete was trying to offer me, what he was telling Luna to offer me. I brought this story up to her years later, now that she's older, and she actually doesn't remember this at all. So, that's it for now. Bye.
This photo was taken in Nuevo León. It shows a group of friends exploring a mine, but something is captured behind them. This mine can no longer be accessed. This footage was captured on a CCTV camera outside of my dad's workplace. We've never been able to make sense of or fully identify whatever creature was caught on camera. I took this photo during a tour of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky. There was nobody in the window when I took the picture, as everyone else was downstairs. The tour guide said it's the most amazing picture she's seen taken there ever. It looks like a small child looking down at the people below. There was also no children on this tour. This is a photo for my 57th birthday. The person in the reflection is my wife taking the photo. The person on her left is my daughter. The old lady on the right is someone we have never seen before. We have no idea who this person is, but she looks happy.
When you were a kid, did you ever hear your mom's voice or your dad's voice calling your name only to find out that no one was calling you? This particular story takes place in a small house in West Palm Beach, Florida. A house that at the time the family had only been living in for a couple of months. And in that short amount of time of living there, they learned that something was wrong with the house. They just didn't know how wrong it was until one night in late 2013. This story is from Emily. Okay, so this all happened in 2013. I was 16 and my family, mom and brother, moved into an old house built in the 40s, I believe, in Royal Palm Beach, Florida. We had only been there about 2 months when this happened. It was late in the evening, like 10:30, 11 p.m. I was in my room upstairs, and from my bedroom door, you could see clearly downstairs into the kitchen and living room. I was on my laptop on Tumblr when I heard my mother call for me. Emily? Almost like a question. This was weird because my mother had gone to bed an hour or so prior. I got up and went to my bedroom door, looked downstairs, and I could see what looked like a silhouette of my mother standing in the kitchen, facing the window above the sink. I didn't say anything. Something didn't feel right. at all. My stomach was in a knot. I looked down the hallway into my mother's room. Her door was open, the lights off, and I could hear her call again. Emily, I need you. I started to step forward. I started to make my way down the stairs. The house got so quiet, not a sound. You could hear a pin drop. I'm still really uneasy at this point. I was about to respond to my mother in the kitchen when I heard my mother call my name from her bedroom. Emily, who is that? My heart stopped beating. I also have the chills right now. I looked back downstairs to the kitchen, and the figure was now at the bottom of the stairs looking up at me. I took a few steps back into my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I slept with my lights on that night. My mom and I talked about it extensively the next morning. I told her everything that I heard, saw, and felt, and she was terrified. She never left her bed. She heard someone calling my name and thought that a friend of mine was at the house, which wasn't uncommon for my friends to just show up and stay at my place for whatever reason, and it woke her up out of a dead sleep. She felt her stomach drop and knew something was wrong, much like I did. It was validating to know that I wasn't the only person to hear what I heard. I didn't feel so crazy, but boy, did I feel terrified for months. I still think about this experience often, and it truly shakes me to my core that to this day, Emily doesn't know who or what was at the bottom of those stairs.
The person that sent me this story called it, "Where Did the Cat Go?" By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hello, Anti-Matrix. Hi, I've been watching your account for over 4 years now, and I'm still obsessed. I love you so much for that. I love hearing everyone's weird and wonderful stories, so I thought, why not share mine? I was staying at my mom's house in Scotland back in July 2023. The weather was awful for that time of year. Really dark skies, heavy rain, thunder, and lightning that carried on well into the early hours. My mom has 3 cats, and like any pet owner, she was worried about them because of the weather. They love being outside though, so we knew they'd eventually come home when they'd had enough. By around 10 p.m., we managed to get 2 of the 3 cats inside. The only one still out was Herbie. Before my mom went to bed, she asked me if I heard scratching at the back door during the night to let him in and settle him in the hallway. Not long after that, I fell asleep on the sofa. At around 2 or 2:30 a.m., I woke up to scratching at the back door. I opened it up and there was Herbie, absolutely soaked from the rain. He was purring, rubbing around my ankles, and clearly pleased to be back inside. I picked him up, gave him a few treats, quickly dried him off with a towel because he was drenched, and put him in the hallway. It's a big porch area where the cats sleep with comfy beds, food, and everything they need. Okay, so it's not really a hallway, it's like a little cat area. That's nice. I remember hearing the little bell on his bright green collar as I put him down. I headed back into the living room, ready to go straight back to sleep. Then, less than a minute later, I heard scratching at the back door again. I remember thinking, surely not. I opened the door, and there was Herbie. Again. Same bright green collar, same soaked fur, same purring and rubbing around my ankles. At first, I thought I'd somehow made a mistake. We sometimes leave the kitchen window open because the cats use it to come and go, and every now and then one of the local cats decides to invite itself into the house, so I thought maybe I'd mix them up. I went straight to check the hallway. There wasn't a single cat in there. Every door and window was shut. There was no way any of them could have gotten out in a few seconds. I'd been back in the living room. I just stood there for a second, trying to make sense of it. Then I went back to the door, and Herbie was still standing there. I know memories can play tricks on you, but I genuinely don't think that's what happened here. I remember drying him off, giving him treats, hearing the bell on his collar, and putting him into his bed. My mom's cats all wear different colored collars, so I know it was definitely Herbie. In the end, I just convinced myself I must have still been half asleep, even though it didn't really explain everything. I let him in again, gave him more treats, put him back in the hallway, checked every door and window one more time, and went back to bed. I've only ever told 3 people this because it sounds completely ridiculous when I say it out loud. I'm 31 now, and I've always enjoyed reading people's stories about glitches or strange experiences, but I'd never had anything happen to me before this. It didn't actually scare me at the time as much as it confused me. It's only afterwards, thinking back on it, that I realized I genuinely can't explain what happened. I haven't told my mom because she's convinced anything paranormal or unexplained is bad, and I know that she'd hate hearing it. It's honestly stayed with me ever since. I remember every detail so clearly, and I've never been able to come up with an explanation that makes sense. Has anyone else experienced anything like this? I genuinely love to know because it's one of those moments that still pops into my head every now and then, and I still have absolutely no idea what happened. I just hope it's not what I think it was. Crying face. Wait, what do you mean crying face? Wait, hold on. Let's dissect this for a second, okay? Because the crying face, because I don't know how old you are. What you said, you're 31. I'm not really sure. Because to me, a millennial, a crying face means you're crying a lot. But apparently, to the younger kids, a crying face means you're laughing really hard. So were you laughing or crying? I'm going to go with crying. But what do you mean you hope it's not what you think it was? What did you think it was? Are you saying you thought it was like a mimic of your cat? So I'm not getting mimic of your cat. I have two theories. And the first theory is that there was a portal. Because I truly and honestly 1000% believe that cats are fucking magical and that they can travel in and out of portals and through portals. I honestly truly believe that. I feel like it's happened to one of my cats before. So maybe there was a portal in that room and he portaled out back into the outside and then he came back to the door again. I don't know. My other theory is because he did the same exact thing. You said it was the same exact thing. He came to the door the second time. He did the same thing. He acted the same exact way. So that feels like a glitch in the Matrix situation. It actually gives me the Matrix vibes when the cat passes and it's like the deja vu. That's what I meant to say. A deja vu situation, not a glitch in the Matrix situation, but kind of, it is a glitch in the Matrix. But I mean deja vu, like it happened exactly again, but it was actually happening exactly again. So I feel like it was like a glitch in the Matrix or like a timeline crossover or something, or like your time went back for a second. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? These are my two theories. I'd love to hear anyone else's theories. Also, I want to know if you think a crying face is laughing or crying. And I want to know if you think cats go through portals. And I also want to know what your opinion is on this. And if you've experienced anything like this before, please let me know. Thank you so much for sharing.
Axe in hand, the vibe is set. And once I start, you won't forget. Don't eat too much because you got to stay fine. But come on, besties. Yeah. Hi, bestie boo. I missed you. You know it's time to get your snack, right? And your gardening essentials. Get that too. Okay, great. Now sit back and relax. So, for the sake of this story, let's call this guy Damon. So, this happened to Damon when he was about 6 years old. The thing about it is, Damon's parents used to fight a lot, like damn near every day. Could you imagine being 6 years old and seeing your parents literally fight all the time? However, Damon had a thing. He had a hiding place, and that hiding place was his closet in his room. At first, it was just his hiding place. You know, he would like play in there, hang his clothes, whatever it is that keeps him away from the yelling. His parents, when they found that out, they thought it was sad, but you know, harmless. They're like, yeah, it's true. We do fight a lot, and he's a child, so of course he's gonna try to find some place that's like the drama is not there. But over time, they started to notice that Damon didn't wait for them to argue anymore to go to that closet. Not only that, he's in that closet for like hours at a time. Like he prefers to play in there. Like he doesn't even really want to spend time in his room. But he will spend all his time in that closet. Sometimes his mom would like call him out to dinner and he'll be like, no, I'm not hungry. I'll just stay in here. He would even like fall asleep in there and try to stay asleep and spend the night in that closet. So boom, this is happening for a little while, and at this point his parents are just like used to it. They're kind of like blaming themselves. They're like, yeah, now he's really like addicted to that closet because we used to fight a lot. So they kind of just like don't try to force him out of doing it. Of course they, you know, tell him you got to sleep in your bed and stuff, but for the most part, they don't really worry about it too much. So one afternoon, his mom heard him laughing, and of course she's like, he in that closet again, he playing. So she goes to check on him and tell him, you know, get out that closet, boy, you've been in there all day. So she goes in there and he is playing, but he doesn't have any toys. He's sitting there laughing like somebody just told him the funniest joke. And then it kind of hit her. Yeah, he does that a lot. Like, I be thinking, I'll just think that he's playing in there, but he is playing, but he's not playing with any toys. It's like he's talking to someone in there. So she asked him, like, what are you laughing at? Like, are you talking to somebody? And Damon is like, yeah, I'm playing. And so the mom is like, okay, but like, who are you playing with? Damon is like, the tall man. And so naturally his mom is like looking in the closet because no one's there. So she tells him like, baby, nobody is in here. Damon is like, yes, he is. He's right there. And he points to the darkest spot in the closet. And the moment he did that, his mom just felt chills run down her spine. Something just did not feel right. Then Damon follows by, the tall man tells me that I don't have to be scared anymore. Immediately after Damon says that, the mom is like, oh, okay, this is an imaginary friend. I get it. Only y'all knew about those imaginary friends, okay? Y'all would never allow y'all kids to have any. So she tells him like, whatever, Damon, get ready for dinner. Dinner's almost done soon, so you gotta come eat. So Damon is like, okay, yeah, just let me know when dinner's ready. So she leaves and she's thinking to herself like, yeah, when his dad gets home from work, I gotta tell him that Damon has an imaginary friend now. Like, this is so crazy. That's exactly what happened. When dad got home from work, she told him what happened, and she told him like, yeah, like he has an imaginary friend now. And they kind of like just brush it off. But then Damon started to tell them things that he couldn't possibly know at 6 years old. For example, one morning they were all sitting down having breakfast, and Damon looks right at his dad and said, hey, your brother's gonna come today. The brother that he's referring to lives 3 states away. 20 minutes later, that same brother called Damon's dad to basically tell him that grandma passed away overnight. So Damon wasn't all the way right, but close enough, right? It was good enough for them to raise an eyebrow, but not really good enough for them to be like, I don't think that's a problem. But then it kept going. Damon would tell them who's about to knock on the door. Damon would tell them when the power is going to go out. Then Damon started to tell them when somebody is about to get hurt. And he is right every time. At this point, his parents are starting to be a little scared, right? They're starting to be a little spooked out. And they're starting to not like that closet very much anymore. But the more they try to keep him out the closet, the more he gets angry. Like, why are you guys trying to keep me away from my friend? Why are you guys trying to keep me out the closet? At this point, Damon would literally sleep in that closet every night. So they wouldn't even leave him in his room anymore. They would have him sleep with them. But somehow they would wake up in the middle of the night and find Damon sleeping in that closet. And Damon's mom is a really light sleeper. So anytime Damon could have got up, she would have woken up and seen him. But she never, ever feels or sees Damon moving to go to the closet. But for some reason, they wake up in the middle of the night. Damon is gone and he's indeed in that closet. And so at this point, they start to get really worried. And the dad is like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm going to just close that closet down, period. He went in that closet. Him and the mom, they cleaned everything out the closet. And he nailed the closet door shut. That same night he did that. Of course, they have Damon sleep with them. Dad wakes up in the middle of the night to knocks on their door, right? And so he wakes up. He's like, it's 3 a.m. Who the hell could be knocking at my door? So he goes downstairs and he doesn't hear anything. But he hears the knock again. So he assumed the knock was coming from the front door, but it wasn't. It was coming from the closet. He's thinking he's crazy. He goes back to the room. Damon is right there. Mom is right there. So who the hell is knocking from inside that closet that he just nailed shut? So immediately he grabs a hammer. He's like, I'm not going to wake them up. I don't want to alarm them. And he starts to unnail, all the nails that he put in the closet. Once he took everything down, he opens the door. And of course, the closet is empty. So who the hell could have been knocking from inside the closet door? At this point, he doesn't know what to do, but he does have work early in the morning. So he's like, you know what? We'll figure this out tomorrow. I'm going to go to sleep. So he goes back to bed. Usually he's the first one up to get ready for work, and he would wake Damon and his mom up so that she can wake him up, get him ready for school and all of that. But when he woke up, Mom was there, but Damon was gone. Of course, he's like, he's in that closet. I done opened that door. Now he back in that closet. So he goes to the closet to go get Damon, but Damon is not in the closet either. He's looking all over the house. Damon is not anywhere in the house. He's looking at the front door. The front door is still locked from last night. All the windows are still the same way. Back door is still locked and everything. So where's Damon? Long story short, Damon goes missing for exactly 3 days. And after 3 days, Damon appears back up, but in the closet. Till this day, the police does not take them serious because, of course, they filed a missing child report. Police actually don't trust them and think that they did some weird stuff. Because how do you tell the police that my child went missing and then 3 days later, the child came back, but we found the child in the closet? Damon came back. He was completely different. He didn't speak for 3 months. They tried to get him all the help that he needed. And one day he just randomly spoke. And when he spoke and they tried to ask him about it, he does not remember anything. He doesn't remember anything from that night. He doesn't remember anything from the 3 days he was gone. Till this day, Damon does not remember anything. But yeah, that's the story, y'all. Don't forget to let me know what you were eating in the comments. I'm about to drop a new YouTube video, so if you want to watch my story times in long form, go over there. Don't watch nobody else's because they're making money off of me. Don't forget to go get your ebook because if they had mine, they would have already been good. Yeah, okay. I love you. Bye.
One of you sent me this story, and the ending genuinely gave me chills. The person who sent me the story would like to remain anonymous, so for the story's sake, I'm going to just refer to this person as Cody. He starts off this entire email by kind of giving me the backstory about this little town in Connecticut that has a graveyard next to a pizza shop. One day, while Cody and his cousins were getting slices of pizza, they decided to sneak away and investigate this graveyard. It's important to note that there is a famous entity that lives and haunts this graveyard, known to the locals as the Woman in White or the Widow in White. He says that he's not sure about her background or the story behind her. They just know that she's there. People describe seeing her as this glowing white figure. What's weird is Cody said that the moment that they stepped through the gates of the graveyard, there was a sudden temperature drop, but it was early spring, summer, and it suddenly felt like an evening in September. But Cody and his group of friends / cousins brushed it off like, we're just standing underneath a tree, the sun is blocking this graveyard, blah, 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 blah. And they continue walking on this path through the graveyard for about 15 minutes. As they're walking, they run into this crow or raven bird that is just sitting there cawing at them and flapping its wings. What's even weirder is that they were within arm's length of this animal, and it would just kind of look at them as they were trying to pass around it, and it would turn around when they would walk away from it. Not superstitious people, so they thought nothing of it again and continued on. Right after they're about to call it quits, they all turn around and begin walking down the path that they just came from, when all of a sudden there are these 2 blinding lights that they see in the middle of the graveyard. Obviously interested in the paranormal and wanting to prove that there is something real, they all turn around and head towards this glowing white light. What's interesting is that Cody describes it as like 2 headlights. That is how bright it is. This whole experience, Cody is taking pictures on his cell phone of everything going on. The crow, the lights, etc. We're about 8 feet away from this glowing white light when all of a sudden the same crow that had been watching them and kind of stalking them through the graveyard begins to make these cawing noises again, flapping its wings, being very disruptive. They all turn around, and as they see the bird stops. They turn back around and the lights / orbs are gone. Now, after the crow and the lights disappeared, the boys are freaking out, so they're running. As they're running, Cody snaps a photo of the graveyard, particularly the road leading up to the graveyard, right across the street from the pizza parlor. Once they're back, they tell their parents everything that had happened, and Cody goes to pull his phone out and goes to show his parents all of these photos that he took during his investigation, and none of them are in his phone anymore. I mean, recently deleted, gone. Here's where things get really, really, really scary. Cody's looking for these photos. One photo did retain on his cell phone, and it was the photo of the road. In that photo, you can see clear as day the woman in white. It scared him so bad that he screamed and dropped his phone. Later that night, they were staying at a hotel across the street. He could see that same crow that had saved them from whatever white light was there completely run over in the middle of the road. Honestly, that's the part that freaks me out, is the crow, because if you know anything about crows, you know that they are very incredibly smart creatures. Something was going on, something was there. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
What would happen if you responded to a mimic? Now, when we hear about these encounters with mimics, there is often this invitation to let them in, to open the door, or to follow. But what would happen if you actually did? Now, there was this girl named Jill from South Carolina. She was driving home one night at 1 a.m., coming back from work. When she goes inside her house, all the lights are off. Her mom is upstairs asleep. Well, as she walks through the living room, she hears her mother's voice say, "Hello, Jill." She goes, "Mom, why are you up so late?" And all she hears is, "Hello, Jill." She goes, "Okay, Mom, like, why is all the lights off and why are you in the kitchen?" And she just responds, "Hello, Jill." So she was kind of freaked out. I was like, okay, is something wrong with my mom? She flips the lights on and there's no one there. And as she goes upstairs to her mom's bedroom, she sees that her door is closed. When she opens it, she sees that her mom is in bed, sound asleep. So she starts trying to rationalize, okay, maybe my mom was talking in her sleep. So she just ignores it. Well, a couple days later, she said she was sitting in her bed, in her bedroom, when she sees her mom walk by. And she says, "Hey, Mom, can you go downstairs and grab me a bag of chips?" But her mom doesn't respond.
Want to start streaming today? tap the Go Live link below to test it now.
So she goes to the door, she looks out the hallway. Her mom is not there. She is not even at the house. A few days after this, she is once again in her bedroom. And she hears her mom calling for her, telling her to come downstairs. So she gets ready to go down to the hallway and she remembers, wait a second, my mom is not home. So she stays in her bedroom until her mom gets there. And finally, a couple days after this, she is coming home from a friend's house. And as she gets out of her car, she notices her mom is standing on the sides of the house with her face turned. And she goes, Mom, are you okay? Like, what are you doing outside? And she hears,
Want to start streaming today? Tap the Go Live link below to test it now.
Hello, Jill. She's like, Mom? And she's like, come with me into the woods. And she's like, what do you mean? And she goes, come with me in the backyard to the woods. And she's kind of like, that's not my mom. She runs inside the house. She closes the door and she sees her mom is there in the kitchen. So she goes to her mom and she starts crying and she says, there's something that's following me and it's pretending to be you. And her mom's just telling her, like, you know, honey, it's okay. Like, there's nothing going on. Like, you're just stressing yourself out. It'll be okay. But she was insistent, you know, Mom, something is pretending to be you. Well, many months pass and she stops having these encounters. But then one night she gets a call from her mom. And her mom is like, hey, honey, I heard you calling me to go down into the basement. But I'm in the bathroom right now. I'll be down, you know, in like 10 minutes. And she's like, no, Mom, do not go down there. Do not go into the basement. That is not me. I am not at home. And her mom's like, what are you talking about? Like, are you playing jokes with me? And she's like, no, Mom, I am not home. And her mom didn't believe her. She thought she was making it up. Well, a week later, she finds that her mother had passed away. And she felt like whatever was pretending to be her mother and then pretended to be her had something to do with it. And did her mom respond to this?
Want to start streaming today? Tap the Go Live link below to test it now.
Movie theaters don't exist. Now, hear me out. When is the last time you've seen a new movie theater being built? I mean, think about it, right? In every town, there are the same exact theaters that have been there for years and years. And it's like you never see these things being constructed. So are they even real? And when you think about a theater, right? On the outside, it just doesn't make sense because it's just this small square building. But when you go inside, there's just endless amounts of spaces. Okay, there's sometimes 20, 25 theaters in a megaplex. But from the outside, how do they fit all of these theaters in that building, right? And with all the exits and in all the different directions that these theaters face, like the layout just doesn't make sense to me. So the question is, how in the world do these things function? And also, when you think about it, it's kind of creepy because if just one person goes and sees a movie, right, they don't cancel that show, right? You still get to see that movie. And sometimes the theaters sit completely empty while there is a movie playing. So why are they showing movies when no one's even watching them? What is the point of that? Now, if you talk to anyone who's worked at a movie theater, they'll tell you the same thing. There are a lot of creepy things that happened. There was this man named Andre. Andre said that one night he was bored and he wanted to go see a movie. So he goes to his local theater and goes inside and he goes up to this kiosk. He said as he looked through the kiosk, he found this movie called Mystico. He said, that's strange. I've never heard of it. I haven't seen any trailers for it. Why not? Let's give it a shot. So he gets a ticket. And then he goes to the concessions and he starts talking to them. Hey, have you guys seen that movie Mystico? And none of them seem to know what he's talking about. We've not heard of that movie. We didn't even know we were playing that movie. And he's like, yeah, you know, I haven't heard of it either. So then Andre follows his ticket and it leads him down a series of hallways all the way to this theater on the end. Now, he goes inside this theater and he said the first thing he noticed, which was really odd because he'd been to this theater many times, is all of the seating looked very old. It wasn't stadium seating. It wasn't these recliners. It was these wooden chairs. And he said, you know, everything about this theater looked like it was from like the 1930s, 1940s. Nothing had been updated, unlike the rest of this theater. So he just went and he sat down in the middle row. We said the theater was already dark, and the projector was just playing a series of just weird, like trailers for movies he had never even heard of. And he said finally the movie came on, And he said this movie just really didn't make no sense. It was just people walking around in just an enclosed room. And he watched this for about 20 minutes when finally he said, you know what, I'm out. Like, I don't like this. He said, but that's when he realized, like, he didn't pay attention to anybody that had came in the theater or anybody that was around him. And he said, as he started to focus his eyes onto the seats all around him, he said there were all of these people. He said the theater was packed. But these people weren't sitting in their chair. He said some of them were standing. Some of them were walking back and forth through the aisles. He said, but something was off about them. They did not look human. And he said they almost seemed to be very robotic, doing the same thing over and over again. So he slowly got up and he walked around each one of these people that were just standing. He said as he started to walk down the stairs to the exit, he said he looked back and the theater was completely empty. Everyone was gone. So he hurried to the exit and he got out of there. So the next day he goes back to the theater and he's like, hey, you know, what's up with this movie Mystico? And he said, the guy behind the counter's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't play a movie called Mystico. He said, no, I watched it last night. I was in theater, you know, whatever. And it was playing. They said, we don't have a theater, you know, 26, 27. He said, no, I was in there last night. I have my ticket stub. And he went to go reach for the ticket stub. He didn't have it. He couldn't find it. It wasn't in his wallet anymore. But he told him, you know, I could show you. Let me show you. So he said the employee went with him into the theater and he showed him where, you know, he had gone in, except there wasn't a theater there. It was just an exit. And they told him, sir, are you all right? Like, is everything okay? You know, maybe you should go home. And so he said he left, but he never could figure out what that movie was, how he seen it, and how he could have watched this movie that just didn't exist.
A series of spooky stories, except for it's this bitch. Now, what the fuck is her problem? This is one of the many mental health professionals that Lindsay Clancy saw in the midst of all of her postpartum issues that she was having. And just as I felt about the ER physician that saw Lindsay Clancy, I feel about her. These bitches. Apparently, this woman was 1 month out of her residency. So she had her residency and she was a baby psychiatrist on her own for 1 month when she started seeing her. All of her visits were telehealth visits. The back and forth between Reddington, which is Lindsay Clancy's lawyer, and this woman got heated, okay? And she came back very unprofessional. He was asking her about medications that she prescribed because there was like 10 different medications in the period of like a month that were prescribed. And that is a lot, okay? She apparently made claims that she had special interests in postpartum. And he was like, you said that you were an expert. And she was like, I don't believe that I said that I was an expert. I said that I had a special interest in it. What do you mean what do you mean? What do you mean by you're a psychiatrist and you just like, oh, it's just a hobby to deal with postpartum women? That's what it came across as to me, okay? That's how I took it. That is such a weird fucking response. And it's also trying to negate how serious that claim could potentially be. And that's what they were also trying to prove. The lawyer was trying to prove. He was saying, would you call yourself an expert? I mean, that would depend on what you would classify someone as an expert. Like, no, you are either an expert or you are not. You know what I mean? Now, this is really where it got heated, okay? She was making notes as a healthcare professional should, and she put in her notes, not hyper, pressured speech. Pressured speech can be a sign of mania, which is what they're also trying to prove that what she was experiencing during this situation, you know. Now, here's the issue. She's saying not hyper, pressured speech, which means she's not hyper, but she does have pressured speech. She said, that's not what I meant. That's an issue, girl. You should have learned while in your residency, in college and all of that jazz. You should know to be as specific as you possibly can in your notes, because just because you knew what you meant doesn't mean that other people knew what you meant, okay? She's saying, I said not hyper, nor pressured speech, whatever. She was like, the not is before hyper. And he was like, no, you said not hyper, pressured speech. She was like, I don't care what I said. This is what I meant. I don't care what that note says. You should, girl. You're at a murder trial. You are at a trial where a woman
has been accused of unaliving her 3 children and attempting to self-unalive. You should really give a fuck about that. He goes on to say, when you wrote this, though, you didn't say not pressured speech. You said in the medical record, pressured speech. She did not have pressured speech. She was sticking to that shit and she was dying on that fucking hill. And then she said, I wrote that, but you're misinterpreting my notes. And he's like, okay. She said, your interpretation is incorrect. And he said, as opposed to yours, I have nothing further. He has mic drops of the fucking century right now. There's so much in all of these, and I feel like I'll probably make a long video in regards to this, but one of the things that I wanted to note as well was that he questioned her about the decision to prescribe Zoloft, and he said, did you tell her that one of the normal side effects was suicidal thoughts and actions and ideations? She said, that's specifically in children, so I don't think that I mentioned that because it wasn't relevant. Here's the thing. If she's feeling this type of way, if y'all have tried so many of these fucking I feel like that would be important to note. Say, hey, you need to let me know as soon as possible. But she was saying in her statements that she was never told by Lindsay that she was feeling these ways. And she was shocked to find out that she called the suicide hotline twice. This is where it goes on. The defense attorney asked Tufts why it took Clancy a month to decide that she wanted to take the prescription for Zoloft. And she said, I think it took her some time to decide if it was truly what she wanted to do. Why? Reddington asks, she was afraid of the drugs, wasn't she? She said she was afraid of the side effects. Oh, okay. And then he said she didn't want to take the pills, did she? And then she eventually did want to take the pills because she wanted to feel better. This is a fucking mess, and this is truly showing how fucked up the healthcare system, but specifically the mental healthcare system is in the United States of America. This is insane. The more I see of these testimonies, the more I'm appalled, and I can't fucking believe it. I cannot fucking believe the shit that I am hearing. The way that like these physicians, they don't know, they can't remember, but then they get defensive and they get snarky. The unprofessionalism is crazy. And it's giving biased as well. I know I'm not the only one that thinks this because I've seen comments where people are like, this is crazy. But please tell me what you think in the comments. Please tell me that I am not crazy for thinking that this bitch is fucking. So take her license. Take it.
The first time I heard my best friend call my name in my house, she was actually at home. And then the third time I heard her call my name, it was like it was right behind me. This happened about 10 months ago, and I was 16 years old at the time. One night it was around 2:30 a.m. in the morning, and I was in a bedroom that I'm not usually laying in, but I was doom scrolling on my phone on Instagram, looking through old messages. That's when I suddenly heard a voice, and it literally called my name, and it sounded like my best friend calling my name. This wasn't weird because my best friend actually had a key to my house. She would argue with her parents, and she would come over like late hours of the night and just stay with me. So when I heard her, I initially thought that she just let herself in, but something about it felt really wrong. And I actually went into my Snapchat app and I wanted to see what her location was. And it said that she was at home, and that's when my stomach dropped. So that's when I texted her and I said, are you at my house? And she responded with, no, I'm at my own house. And then I just told her, okay, like it's nothing, and I tried to brush it off. After that, for about a month, nothing happened until there was one night I was staying at home alone because my parents were in the hospital with my grandma. I was downstairs in the living room, I was watching a movie, and I always close my living room door when I'm watching something when I'm alone. That's when I heard my best friend's voice again, and this time it sounded angry. Like when it said my name, it was angry. And then it said it again, and it said, come into the kitchen. It sounded exactly like her, but she had never talked to me in this way before. She was a very bubbly, like happy, optimistic person. I grabbed my phone, I checked her location again, and it did show that she was walking towards my house, but she was not in my house yet. And so about 10 minutes later, I heard a knock on the door, and it was my friend. When she came inside, I didn't tell her what happened. We spent most of the night just laughing and like talking about anything and everything. And then I noticed as she was there that whole night, the atmosphere just felt so off. Like it felt very cold, like there was tension or like somebody was angry in the room, but neither of us were angry. The next day she went home, and I tried to forget about this until the next Friday night happened. It was around midnight and I got home from hanging out with some friends. I put on my PJs and I jumped in my bed and I was gonna text my boyfriend. I remember I was lying on my side when I heard the voice again. This time it was right behind me and it whispered my name so quietly. It sounded exactly like my friend. So when it said my name, I actually responded this time out of instinct and I said yes. And then the whole atmosphere changed. It got so cold and so eerie feeling, and it responded to me. It said, "Why didn't you come into the kitchen when I asked?" I didn't know what to do other than close my eyes, and I stayed completely still until I saw sunlight come into my curtains in the morning. And that's when I reached out to my friend Maisie, and she sent me a picture, and she was in her boyfriend's bed. She literally stayed in her boyfriend's bed, like at his house, the whole night. She never came over. I never told her what happened. I just told myself that maybe I was really sleep deprived. I don't know, but I haven't slept in that bedroom 4 months because I will never forget the feeling of the breath hitting the back of my neck, calling my name. If you have a scary experience or a story or something that you really just cannot explain, feel free to send it in the link in my bio and I'll share it on my page.
This story was shared by one of my friends and it is honestly so crazy. Apparently his friend's girlfriend is so toxic that she created a voodoo doll of his friend in order to control him. So let's call him Marcus. Marcus and Jasmine have been together for years, probably for the past like 5, 6, 7 years. Their relationship has always been extremely toxic. They're the type of couple that constantly break up and make up to the point that when they break up, nobody ever takes them seriously anymore because everyone knows that eventually they're going to get back together. Apparently, Jasmine went ahead and created a voodoo doll of Marcus because Marcus started working night shift at a gas station. She got involved in voodoo and says that the reason she was creating this doll was to protect Marcus from like anything bad happening to him while he's working night shift. That was her story. As time went on, you guessed it, Marcus and Jasmine get into another fight and they break up. Only this time Jasmine had a voodoo doll. What did she do? She went ahead, grabbed the voodoo doll that represented Marcus, threw it in the freezer, shut the door, and completely forgot about it. The next day Marcus wakes up feeling shortness of breath. He is cold, he's shivering. There's all of these things going on with him that scare his family so much that they end up rushing him to the hospital. When they get to the hospital diagnoses him with severe hypothermia and a bunch of other things going on with him. They try to do everything to keep him comfortable, but like it's insane that Marcus got diagnosed with hypothermia in the middle of July. This story just happened last month, by the way. They go ahead and they give him like steroids and antibiotics because he was apparently getting like fluid in his lungs. Like he had all this stuff going on with him. When Jasmine finds out that Marcus is in the hospital, she remembers the doll and takes the doll out of the fridge. Lo and behold, almost like night and day, Marcus's like symptoms go away. Marcus and his family actually ended up confronting Jasmine because as it turns out, Jasmine went around telling several people what she did. And when they confronted her, her excuse was that there's no way that's the reason why Marcus was at the hospital, that she didn't even do the voodoo doll right, that she didn't even have a piece of Marcus's hair or a bunch of other things that she needed. Like she didn't have all of the ingredients for a voodoo doll, so it couldn't have been that. Apparently intention is strong enough and like be so for real. Long story short, you guessed it, Jasmine and Marcus are back together, living their toxic ways, and the location of the voodoo doll is unclear. So there might actually be a part 2 to this. Who knows?
I saw 3 women standing in the middle of the road at night when I was making a road trip through the Midwest. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about what I saw that night that I still just can't explain. I had been driving for hours when my headlights suddenly caught someone standing directly in my lane. A woman, barefoot with long dark hair and a pale dress hanging almost to her ankles, and she wasn't waving for help. She wasn't trying to move, she was just standing there, and I slammed on the brakes and everything on my passenger seat flew onto the floor. The car stopped maybe 20 feet from where she had been. I looked up and nobody was there. I stared through the windshield trying to figure out where she could have gone, and there were cornfields on both sides of the highway, no houses or cars. I checked my side mirrors, but nothing. For a second, I genuinely wondered if I had hit her. So I looked into the rearview mirror and there were 3 women standing behind my car. I stopped breathing. They looked almost identical with the same long dark hair, the pale dresses, and bare feet. They were standing shoulder to shoulder in the middle of the road, and all 3 of them were smiling. Not normal smiles, their mouths were stretched too wide. Thick black liquid was running down between their lips, down their chins, and onto their necks. I threw the car into drive, and before I could move, the woman in the middle slowly raised her arm. She pointed directly at me, and the one beside her took a step toward the car. I hit the gas and I kept looking in the mirror as I drove away. They didn't chase me again. They didn't even move. They just stood there smiling until I couldn't see them anymore. I told myself not to look back. I turned the music up and I kept driving. And then something wet landed on the back seat. I heard it, a single drop, but then another. I slowly looked into the rearview mirror, and black liquid was running down the inside of my back windshield. I almost drove off the road. I didn't stop. I didn't even turn around to see where it was coming from. I drove until I found a truck stop with bright lights and other people outside. I parked right beside the entrance and ran inside. I stayed there until the sun came up, and when I finally went back to my car, the back window was completely clean. There wasn't any black liquid or stains, nothing. I never saw those women again, and I just know there was one woman in front of my car when I stopped, and 3 standing behind it afterward. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Another scary photo I found for you on Reddit. You tell me what you think about it. So this person lives alone. No one else has the key to their apartment. This looks like daytime, but apparently it was not. It's just the way the camera is. I don't know what country it was taken in. The next morning, she checks the camera and she sees that looks like it is right on her. Some people have said that it is like her arm on the blanket. I don't think it looks like that. It kind of almost looks like it has shoulder blades. I don't know, maybe 2 arms. But if that was her arm, she would have a really long arm. So what do you guys think? I don't know. What do you think? It's kind of hard to tell anymore, especially with the way people are able to manipulate photos and stuff. But you just kind of have to view it for what it is, take it for what it is. They're saying that no one was in the house with them. They're saying that they live alone. They're saying that that's not their arm. So what do you think it is? Let me know in the comments. And if you like stuff like this, make sure you follow for more spooky content.
What would you do if you woke up to a ghost sitting on the side of your bed beginning to touch your legs? Welcome back to another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. If you guys have any stories that you ever want me to share on here, you can send to the email that's in my bio. But let's go ahead and get into the story because it is absolutely creepy. This girl writes that this happened to her when she was a teenager. She lived in a very old house. There was nothing special about her room except for the fact she noticed that it was so much colder than the rest of the house. She said it first started out with just some really scary dreams. She would wake up super aggressively and just startled and completely freaked out, and she would wake up with this feeling of a presence in her room. She said at first the dreams were just really creepy, but over time they just got more and more prominent, more creepy, more direct. An unsettling presence was just getting closer and closer to her. I wouldn't have been sleeping in there anymore. I'll take the couch for all I care. I'm not sleeping there. She said that she would wake up, feel a presence, but there really wouldn't be anything there other than this like looming shadow. And yet that would have been enough for me. Said it at first started in the corner of her room and that each night it would move somewhere just a little bit closer. And eventually she was able during the day to even feel this just presence in her room. She said from time to time she would get the impression of these like red glowy eyes or this very skeletal face. Now after some time she said she would wake up and would notice that something or someone was sitting on her bed, but she couldn't see them. She could only see the indentation on the bed. The question is, why are we still sleeping here? I'm so confused. Was the couch not an option? But then it started to touch her. She said that at first it started with the ghost just touching her leg and would pinch her all over. Sometimes would wake up with unexplainable bruises, scratches, and that she always woke up tired and exhausted and was never able to get any rest. She said that she tried a whole bunch of different things to get this ghost to go away. She said that she tried banishing, chanting various things, from protection items, amulets. However, she writes that this one night was the worst it had ever been. She said just as she was about to fall asleep, she saw this thing at the head of her bed. Deeply scratched her inner thighs. She said that she just began screaming and crying. It had red glowy eyes, a skeletal smile, and it was just this big shadow with these creepy long claws. Absolutely not. I would have passed away. It wouldn't have had to worry about me anymore. No. The sight of that would have put me into cardiac arrest. And out of nowhere, she just screams, "Name of the light in Jesus Christ, in all of the holy gods, angels, and holy ones, be gone." She said in that moment, almost immediately, that creature shadow thing jolted back and looked terrified. And then it just let out this long hiss at her. And suddenly, she kind of went back to sleep. She said after this, when she woke up that next morning, it was the first time in months that she had had an actual restful night of sleep. And that's one thing, these demons don't play with Jesus. Call on the name of Jesus,
they be gone. Them demons run and flee. However, when she got out of the covers, that's when she does notice these 3 large whelps on her inner thighs from where this thing had scratched her. She said that there was dry blood all on her legs and that it was already starting to scab. She said that it took forever for her thighs to heal and that it left marks that will never go away. However, from that night on, that thing never came back to torment her ever again. But she notes that she feels like it truly never left. She said that from time to time, she could still feel that creature shadow thing just staring at her, lurking around her bedroom, but it never touched her ever again. And I'm just trying to understand, why are we still sleeping there? Did you not tell your parents? What did they think about your thighs when they saw it all scratched up? Was sleeping on the couch not an option? I'm not judging. Yes, I am. I just have questions, okay? I hope you guys enjoyed another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. This one absolutely was terrifying. But like always, if you guys have any stories that you want me to share on here, you can send it to the email to my bio. But y'all make smart choices. And if you have a ghost that's coming and touching you in the middle of the night, please go sleep on the couch.
Anneliese Michel was born on September 21st of 1952 in Bavaria, Germany. She was born to a very religious family, and her story is absolutely tragic. You've probably seen a little bit of it in the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose, but the real story behind it is actually more tragic than it is scary. From a very young age, Anneliese was a good girl. She was a smart girl, and she had big plans to go to college. She decided that she wanted to go to the University of Wurzburg. I probably said that wrong, correct me down in the comments. But before she was able to make it, she started experiencing these blackouts. She would just randomly black out in the middle of the day with no recollection of what had happened. Soon it would get worse and more frequent, and she would have convulsions with it. As things got progressively worse, she then started having hallucinations on top of everything else. Anneliese did seek medical attention for this, and she was given a diagnosis of temporal lobe epilepsy. She was given medication for this, but things didn't get better. In fact, they got worse. And as things escalated, Anneliese started to believe that she wasn't sick, she actually was possessed by a demon. What didn't help things is that her parents agreed with her. They reinforced this belief that she was, in fact, possessed by a demon. The thing with temporal lobe epilepsy is that it can bring on a thing or a syndrome called Geschwin syndrome, and this is rarely happens, but this can often bring on a strong urge to write or draw, and often bring on a deep, intense focus of religion. But Anneliese did continue to take the medication, but things just got progressively worse. Along with the blackouts, convulsions, and hallucinations, she started hearing demons whispering to her, telling her that she was damned and that she was going to rot in hell. Anneliese didn't believe that the medication was working, so eventually she stopped taking it. She then turned to the church asking for an exorcism. The church denied her, saying that she needed to find medical attention. But things just got worse and worse. Anneliese started compulsively doing 400 squats a day. She was crawling on all fours. She was eating spiders and coal, and one day she even bit the head off of a dead bird. Then in 1975, she requested the help from a priest named Ernst Alt, and he petitioned for an exorcism to Joseph Stongel. They were approved. They were approved to do this exorcism, but the only thing was is that this had to be done in complete secrecy. Ernst Alt was able to get another priest named Arnold Renz to come in and help, and over the next 10 months, they would come to Anneliese's house 2 times a week for 4 hours at a time, and they performed these exorcisms. Over time, they decided that she was possessed by 6 demons: Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, Adolf Hitler, Nero, and a disgraced priest known as Father Fleischmann. They recorded over 42 hours of these exorcisms, and in these recordings, Anneliese would speak in tongues and she would use obscenities. She also spoke in a voice that didn't sound like her own. One time she said that she was dying to atone for the wayward youth of the day and the apostate priests of the modern church. By the summer of 1976, she had deteriorated so much. She was emaciated and she had pneumonia, and her knees were broken from dropping down to her knees to pray several times a day. She was 23 years old and she weighed just 66 pounds, and on July 1st of 1976, Anneliese passed away. She died from dehydration and malnutrition. It would take a year for anyone to be charged, but a year later, her mother and father and the 2 priests were charged with negligent homicide. Once they got to court, Anneliese's parents and the priest argued that she was in fact possessed by a demon. They said that she was not epileptic and that they were just trying to help her, but the prosecutors disagreed, saying that she needed to have medical attention, which they did not give her. They argued that, in fact, they had reinforced her belief that she was possessed by a demon, making her condition worse, and the jury agreed. They were found guilty of manslaughter resulting in negligence. The two priests were sentenced to 6 months in prison. This was later suspended, and the parents were not given any form of punishment, with the jury saying that they had, in fact, suffered enough. I just want to know how you can let your child go from this vibrant, beautiful, ready to see the world to this and not get doctors involved. Or do you believe that she was really possessed? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more true crime.
He was born in love with me. There was never really a doubt in Alice's mind that we were meant to be together. I mean, we met at an age where love was an afterthought to raging hormones and teenage immaturities. Never once did we stray the path from each other like most adolescent romances do. I mean, our commitment was unbreakable. It was no surprise to anyone that we got married as soon as we could. We said our vows before our friends and family and swore to uphold the unconditional and everlasting union, and that we know at reception we delighted in dancing, drinks, and just a night that we would definitely not forget. And that is the night that Alice said, "I was born in love with you." But our marital bliss wouldn't last long. Our downfall began with Ellis's night terrors. He'd wake up screaming and flailing against invisible assailants. I'd hold him close and whisper comforting things in his ears, try to calm his nerves and ease his mind. And finally, once he was in a more tranquil state, he said that he couldn't remember his dreams when I asked him about them. Being with someone for so long, you start to learn their tics and talks. So I knew that Alice lied to me. And as the terrors intensified and persisted, his ability to wake from them waned. And his screams soon turned into unintelligible words, and I soon realized that he was speaking languages that he couldn't possibly know, like Chinese, Russian, German, Latin, Hindi, Zulu, Arabic. In his unconscious state, he scratched and clawed and often awakened me with vicious thrashes, and he screeched and howled like an animal caught in a trap. Basically, it became that the only option was to subdue him for the night by wrapping him up tightly in blankets under the bed. I mean, medical experts offered no help because in the medical field's infinite lack of wisdom, several doctors claimed a psychological and physiological condition, but we decided to stop going for them once they suggested commitment. I mean, Ellis was my love, not some lunatic, okay? So it wasn't gonna happen. But as time continued, he started sleeping less and less. Dark circles made permanent fixtures under his eyes, and his hair that I've run my fingers through since childhood started falling out in clumps. The energetic man that I have been in love with for forever was just withering away before my eyes. And in his final days, Alice confessed to me the knowledge of a terrible secret. He admitted to lying about his nightmares and said that they were actually memories of our past lives throughout the centuries as humans and other beings alike. But our bond never lasted, as we were abominations to the world's natural cycle of life and death. And I too would soon perish in such a way. And of course, this news brought me terror, but his last words also brought me comfort. Because in death and life anew, we would always find each other again, because he would always be born in love with me.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of this girl who we used to babysit here at home, and her grandparents did witchcraft. So for story's sake, we're gonna call this girl Layla, right? Layla stayed with her grandparents because her mom moved overseas and she could not take her with her because Layla was familiar with people from South Africa, and they tried to move her to another country and it just didn't work. Why? Because baby girl was low-key possessed. So the first day that she came to stay with us, because her grandmother had to go back to work as well, she started screaming at some point. She started screaming, she started crying. We take off her clothes, we give her different clothes because we had a little baby girl as well here at home, but like she was grown now, and then her clothes were in the garage. So we take the clothes in the garage and we give them to Layla. Layla, we put the clothes on her because maybe we thought, no, maybe something is wrong. Now she starts screaming. It starts getting worse. She starts screaming, she starts crying. She says things are walking all over her, and she was crying, y'all. It was so sad, and we can't even help her because we don't know what she's talking about. We tried pouring water, we tried giving her food, nothing was working. And all of these things happened whenever her mom would leave. Like when she went to her mom, she was fine. When she went back to her grandmother, all of these things would start. So how we'd stop, like my mom would pray for her every single morning that she gets here. She would pray for her, whatever. And then when she leaves, she would pray for her as well, so she would be fine. And then I remember this one time, Layla's mom came to fetch her because she was in the country. And she was like, I don't know what's going on, but every single time I take Layla to my parents' house, Layla starts screaming and crying. And when it's time for her to enter the bathroom, she doesn't want. She just starts to cry, and we don't know what she's seeing in there because she can talk, but then she doesn't want to say what she's seeing, and it's starting to bother her, whatever. Fine. Then her mom left. And then like a week later, she started again with her things. We called her grandmother because we were like, my dear, we cannot. Her grandmother came to fetch her and was like, I'll take her to the doctor. My mom was like, take her to a traditional healer. She was like, no, it's okay. God, what, we'll just take her to a doctor. And then she took the baby and she never brought her back. So fine, my mom got into contact with Layla's mom and was like, listen mom, this is what's happening. Don't you think we should take Layla to a traditional healer or like a prophet or a pastor, something? Layla's mother was like, listen, I also believe in those things. Take her to this prophet, blah blah blah. Me and my mom take Layla to a prophet. When I tell you, the prophet, before we even got to the prophet, the grandmother was calling like, give me back my grandchild. I heard what you guys were doing. Layla's mom told me, yada yada yada. Why would you do that with somebody's child? Da da da. And we were like, oh. Layla's mom was so quick in telling her, because when I tell you we're at the gate, almost about to enter with Layla, baby girl called, was like, listen, I want my grandchild back. And my mom was like, it's fine. Let's give her back to her grandmother. Guys, Layla stopped coming to us. We stopped taking care of her. And I remember one day Layla's mom called my mom and was like, how was the traditional healer thingy, blah blah blah. And my mom was like, what traditional healer? Because you told your mom that we're taking your child to a traditional healer. If you didn't feel comfortable, you could have said so instead of sending your mom to come and get the child. And she's like, I never told my mom anything. My mom told me that you guys were mistreating the baby, so she took the child out of daycare because I was the one that was primarily watching her, right? And so my mom is like, what? No. The day that we were supposed to take us to the prophet, your mom called and was like, yada yada yada. And so baby girl's like, listen, I dreamt of my mom feeding my child things and riding my child like a horse. So she's kind of stressed. She wanted to find out like how it went at the traditional healer's place. My mom is like, we never went. Layla's mom came back and took her child to the prophet. Guess what? Layla's grandparents were into witchcraft. Yes, both of them, the grandfather and the grandmother, they were both into witchcraft, and they were trying to initiate Layla into witchcraft because her mom was over there and she couldn't see what they were doing. So they're trying to initiate the child into witchcraft. And whenever Layla wanted to go inside the bathroom and she refused to go inside the bathroom, it was because there was an animal in the bathroom, but nobody else knew but the people that were using that animal for bad things. So that animal lived in the bathroom. You would pee and do your things in that bathroom thinking it's okay. Kanti, there's a spiritual animal living there. And so Layla used to see that animal, and they were trying to they introduced Layla to that animal and they showed her the animal so that she can get used to the animal, right? And Layla was obviously scared as a child, so that's why she was screaming and crying every single time they said, like, get inside the bathroom. She refused. When things were working all over her, that was a sign from God that, listen, something is wrong with the child. Because every single time, and me in my household, my mom prays all the time. So that was what the problem was. And yeah, eventually Layla's mom took her daughter and she was like, hey, you guys are not about to do my child like that. Oh no. She took her child and moved her overseas, and before she moved her overseas, they went to this prophet that she was talking about with my mom, and they prayed for her and they did the things. When I tell you, when she was overseas, she was fine. All of a sudden, she was not making a fuss anymore, and it was very clear that the grandmother was doing these things so that she can take Layla and bring her this side so that she can work on her. And Layla is her biological grandchild. Layla's grandmother is Layla's mom, so she was trying to take her own grandchild.
a spooky story? Of course you do. And today I'm gonna make a follow-up on my TikTok that I made this one here. And I'm gonna talk about the time that I'm 100% sure I experienced a glitch in the Matrix. I would say this was about 2 years ago, roughly, and I was living with my flatmate at the time, and it was just us two. We didn't really have many people over, you know, that kind of thing. And I remember we were having a night in, and we were on the sofa. It was winter time, and I remember it started getting really cold. So the best way to describe the flat is that there was a long hallway, there was the lounge / kitchen here where we were hanging out, and then down the hallway was my bedroom. So I was like, I'm gonna go to get a jumper or something because it was getting cold. I grab my hoodie, which I specifically keep in my wardrobe away for most of the year. So I went to go grab that, I put it on, and I'm walking back down the hallway, and I hear what sounds like almost like a marble drop right in front of me and roll. So I'm looking at what possibly could have fallen. I'm thinking, oh, maybe like something fell from the ceiling, or because it sounded like it came from above me. And I looked down, and rolled into the middle of the hallway is my earring. And so then I go to feel my ears. I have 3 sets on each ear. And I go to touch my ears, and all of my earrings are in place. I freak out thinking that I am hallucinating. So I go to my flatmate, and she's like, wait, what was that rolled on the ground? And I'm like, it's my earring. And she's like, why are you freaking out about it? And I'm like, because all of my earrings are in my ears, and I don't own another pair of the earring that I was holding in my hand. And obviously many people with earrings will know that earring sets don't sell in a row of 3. It will either be 2 or it will be 4. And I knew I had bought them in Claire's, and it was a set of 2. I could not figure out where this 3rd earring had come from. I think the thing that made it really bizarre was that I knew for absolute certain I didn't own another pair. So it wasn't like I had 2 sets of the same earrings and I lost one, and the 3rd one just so happened to be in my hoodie. Second of all of my jewelry I keep religiously in a jewelry box or in a jewelry set on my bedside table. And like I mentioned, my hoodie was in a wardrobe, so they were in 2 completely separate places. And the sound it made, this genuinely dropped. It dropped from a height and rolled. And we tried to drop this earring several times to get it to 1, recreate the sound, and 2, recreate the distance it fell, because it rolled a few times. And we could not do it. It would not roll, and it would not make the same clink that it did. And we were trying to do it from my ear, or we were trying to do it from different parts of my body in case it was stuck in my hoodie. Nothing we did replicated the sound and the distance of which this earring traveled at. At the time, I only wore silver. I only bought gold, I think, a few months ago. So I only ever wore silver. And we had asked everybody that had possibly been around in the flat. Every single person replied either that they only had gold jewelry, or that they didn't wear jewelry, or that the earring that they had, even if it was silver, was that they didn't have anything like that. They only bought, specialized jewelry. Literally, the air, as soon as we'd figured out that there was no way that this earring could have belonged to anybody else, and there was no way it came from anywhere else, the air in the flat completely changed. I felt watched, my flatmate felt watched. We were so uncomfortable. The hair was standing on the back of our necks the entire night. We had goosebumps. I still have goosebumps thinking about it. It was so bizarre. To this day, we keep beating up this dead horse. We keep trying to figure out where this earring came from, what could have possibly happened. But I have no clue. My flatmate has no clue. I truly believe that this was a glitch in the Matrix. But a really scary thing that one of my friends said was, what if in another universe you lost an earring and you couldn't find it, and somehow the layers crossed and now it's in this timeline instead of the one that it should have been in. If anybody's listened to this entire yap and actually has ideas on what it could possibly be, please let me know. But ever since then, I'm convinced it was a glitch in the Matrix.
Bro, what's going on around